Breaking tonight, the leader of the newly redesigned and redesignated War Department is declaring war on many of the policies he believes have hurt military readiness and morale. War Secretary Pete Hegseth is making some radical changes aimed at increasing lethality and decreasing what he calls wokeness. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the list tonight. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. Secretary Hegseth spent 45 minutes addressing the nation's top military officers, who he summoned from around the world for the mandatory in-person meeting, presenting a 10-point plan defining the warrior ethos and an end to what he has dubbed the war on warriors.
If the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign.
The plan calls for increased physical fitness, daily PT training, even for officers, and a focus on appearance and grooming standards, no more beards, no more accusing leaders of toxic leadership. Secretary Hegseth introduced the golden rule: don't do anything in your units that does not make them as trained and lethal as what you would expect if your own child were serving. Hegseth also says he is returning combat fitness standards to male fitness standards, but he is not opposed to women serving.
I'm also directing that warfighters in combat jobs execute their service fitness test at a gender-neutral, age-normed male standard scored above 70%. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world.
Secretary Hegseth vowed to overhaul the Inspector General process, which he said rewarded complainers and ruined careers, to review and loosen the definitions of toxic leadership, bullying and hazing, and denounced what he calls wokeness in the military.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that.
Secretary Hegseth also called for ending military rules of engagement, which were put in place to avoid civilian casualties. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you.
So there are hundreds of military officials who have flown in from around the world, generals and admirals, as you heard from some of the questions there. And the commander-in-chief is about to address them, Dana. I think another headline in there is when he said we're waiting for Hamas. This was a big deal that he and Netanyahu put on the table yesterday, and so many Arab nations overnight, you know, they endorsed this deal. And quite literally at the moment, we are waiting on Hamas to give an answer to Trump and Netanyahu.
And Alexandria Hoff is at the White House. She can catch us up before we hear from President Trump any moment. Hi, Alex.
Hi, good to be with you. Yeah, well, Secretary Hegseth's message here today really was reiterating President Trump's peace through strength, but he did take it a step further, saying really the Department of Defense is no longer, the Department of War is now. And somebody who was in the room might know better, but it appeared to me Secretary Hegseth was did not have a teleprompter in front of him, that this was off the cuff, this was lengthy, it was almost poetic in its pacing. Now, there's going to be many people who took issue with what he said in these remarks to military leaders today. It wasn't necessarily polite, but that appears to have been the point. He said this is an era where we are done with political correctness, with wokeness, as he refers to often. And with that, he says standards have to be heightened when it comes to preparation, when it comes to equipment, when it comes to physical fitness and appearance.
Program, no reform, no formation will ultimately succeed unless we have the right people and the right culture at the War Department. If I've learned one core lesson in my 8 months in this job, it's that personnel is policy.
And new personnel policy, Secretary Hegseth said, hit the inboxes of the military leadership in attendance. There were 10 new directives that he touched on today. They're centered around combat readiness, a return to merit. Hegseth said a new combat field test is being added, and he said it's not discrimination to mandate that personnel must be in shape, shave, show up on time, or work hard. And for combat physical fitness, he says they will be set at the male standard.
But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I would assume that means that there are many men who will also not meet those standards. And Secretary Hegseth said there is nothing wrong with this kind of conversation that he wants to bring up now. Not even a conversation, a mandate that there has to be gender-neutral attire, that leadership must be apolitical. And he told this crowd here that hundreds all around the country and all the world, any military member who is 1 star and above, that if any of what he says caused their hearts to sink, that maybe they should consider resigning. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Alex, thank you so much. And Joey Jones, of course, a veteran himself, joins us now to give your take as we've just listened to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth on his big speech here in front of this group. And President Trump is going to take the stage any moment. Joey, let's give you those moments in between to tell us what you think.
From this moment forward, the only mission of the newly restored Department of War is this: war fighting, preparing for war and preparing to win, unrelenting and uncompromising in that pursuit. Not because we want war, no one here wants war, but it's because we love peace.
Sorry, Joey, now the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm just so anxious to get on here and talk about this. This is exactly what I've wanted to hear for the better part of a decade since I left the Marine Corps. This is exactly what we need to hear. This idea, I mean, I wrote a whole note of quotes from him. No more men in dresses. We're done with that crap. I mean, to speak plainly to our troop leaders, we haven't seen that in my lifetime. Nothing he said can be shot full of holes. Nothing he said isn't true. It may hurt some feelings, but it's not untrue. It's exactly what we need to hear. We haven't won a war since we started worrying about people's feelings over their effectiveness. I mean, we fought a 20-year war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I say all the time, we fought it in 2-year increments because every 2 years we held an election and reset the game. This is to pull our military leaders out of that process and tell them to focus inward towards the warfighter, their capabilities, and the readiness. And he called out all the reasons why we've been attacked from the inside when it comes to being capable to fight a war. He quoted E.B. Sledge, and for those of you that don't know, if you watched The Pacific, he's one of the characters there, in his book, With the Old Breed. And invoking E.B. Sledge, we have to talk about the fact that we lost so many men in the Pacific campaigns because of bad hygiene and bad conditions. So from that now, you have to shave your beard, cut your hair, and be in good shape. And we've turned that into some sort of discriminatory policy that for some reason looking good and being in shape and clean is discriminatory. The reporter hit before this said that Pete Hegseth said these things aren't discriminatory. That's not exactly true. He said this is the type of discrimination that is warranted and needed. And that's exactly right. Because if you're not the kind of person that can stay in shape, stay in good hygiene, and be a good leader, they don't want you. You can make it in a free society, but you're not going to make it in our military. There are war fighters all over this world that listen to those words and are cheering as if we just won a war.
Joey, what is the value of, they brought commanders in from all over the world at critical posts at a critical time in world history too, the Middle East, Asia. What's the value of bringing them all together on one location? And knowing that it's never been done this way, maybe, I mean, Dana and I were just talking, maybe you go to them. And maybe that's what he does next. What's the value of this moment in this gathering now?
Who in that room can say they didn't hear him clearly? Who in that room a month from now can say, that's not what I heard when he came to visit me? That's not exactly how the policy, I think, is supposed to be put forth. Rather than playing the telephone game, rather than presenting this message 100 times over so people have more opportunity to kind of finagle their way around it, it was direct, it was in their face, and they heard it together in one room. You can't mince words now. This is the policy, this is the culture, get on board or get the hell out. The value is people staying alive. The value is people like me not losing my legs because a commander somewhere was afraid to do what was necessary to use JDAMs to clear a town of enemy people instead of me on my foot. That's the type of value we're looking for. That's what we've screened for and begged for in this 20-year war. And at least for a moment in time, we have it. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of men in this world, General Mattis is one of them, who have said the right thing in a small room. But for Pete Hegseth to say the right thing on the largest stage possible, you won't see that again. There isn't that much courage in Washington, D.C. right now. That was a big deal.
Joey, he suggested that if any of them aren't on board, that they should resign. Do you think any of them will?
I certainly hope so. I hope any of them that think what he said was offensive or wrong sign their papers, take their fat retirement, go hang their uniform that doesn't fit anymore in a closet, and go give speeches for a living or join some think tank. They can still be of value if they have something to contribute. But if you're not on board with this type of culture, you don't deserve to wear the uniform anymore. I lost my legs in 2010. I can pass a height and weight standard right now. It's not easy. I bleed to do it, but I do it for a reason. I do it to remind myself that anything worthwhile is not easy, that living a long and healthy life isn't lazy. And if you can't set that example when your job is to sit at a desk and drink coffee, then how are you going to set it on the battlefield? And don't think generals don't go to the battlefield. I invoke General Mattis. He is who he was among Marines because of his leadership on the battlefield as a general that fought from Vietnam till Iraq. So these legendary leaders did so on foot, in uniform, in gear, on the battlefield. And to think that we're so far away from that we can sit at a desk and pontificate on, whether or not someone should be able to wear a beard for religious exemption, when the whole point of it is if you can't put a gas mask on, then you're going to die and then somebody's got to take care of you. That's not how it works. Pete called all that out, and I appreciate it.
One more thing. I saw General Mattis in action in Kandahar, December of 2001. It was quite impressive. Refused to do any interviews. Said, go talk to the men. Every single time, go talk to the men.
Absolutely.
I've heard Secretary Hegseth in 8 months talk about this warrior ethos 1,000 times. I think it comes out of his mouth every time he's talking. Joey, as a man who's been there, what does that mean? How do you define that? Or was this the definition that he just gave in this speech here today?
The most core principle in leadership you could ever ask for is consistency. To say the same thing in front of cameras and microphones that you said to me behind the wall a few minutes ago. Because then I can predict, and I know what your intent is, and I can predict what the outcome will be. I may vehemently disagree with it, but I can work with that. But if you chameleon and change and kind of snake your way around to make everyone happy, then you've done nothing in the terms of leadership at all. You've only created confusion and distrust. The most important thing Pete Hegseth is doing is standing true to the words he wrote in his book, standing true to the words he said in front of the committee to be confirmed, and standing true to the words he's told individuals for the last 8 months by doing it in front of the world. Now, the next part is you got to put it into motion. There will be lawsuits. There will be op-eds in every publication. Every liberal reporter at the Pentagon is going to come after him. They're going to bring up everything they can. It's going to be just like his confirmation all over again. But he knew that before this morning, and he knows it right now, and he did it anyway, and I believe it's for a reason, and it's not to make him into some folk hero. It's to make us into a capable country that can fight China in the Pacific and drug lords in South America and potentially Russia or Hamas on our other or from our other coast in the Middle East and Europe. That's the type of war or world we live in, and if we can't fight those fights, even all at once, then we don't last. Much less if we can't fight the fight of keeping our own people safe here at home, which is what the president's doing with the National Guard right now. All of that matters.
Joey Jones, great to have you to lead us off today. We await the president's remarks at the Pentagon following the Secretary of War's speech this morning in front of all the generals from around the world, all gathered there. Joey, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is at the Pentagon. Jennifer, this was enormous, important, and really the first.
Absolutely, and also went on for quite some time. President Trump also said he told Secretary Hegseth Harris he should use America's cities for military training and spoke repeatedly about fighting the enemy within. President Trump joked when he came on stage that you could hear a pin drop and encouraged the generals and admirals to relax and clap and cheer if they wanted to. There was a lot of fear and speculation heading into the speech because the hundreds of top military officers weren't told why they were being summoned.
I'm going to be meeting with generals and with admirals and with leaders, and if I don't like somebody, I'm going to fire them right on the spot.
Secretary Hegseth presented a 10-point plan to elevate what he refers to as the warrior ethos, prepare for war, and end what he has dubbed the war on warriors, the title of his book. He introduced the golden rule: don't do anything in your units that does not make them as trained and lethal as you would expect if your own child were serving, enforcing gender-neutral, merit-based standards. The plan calls for daily PT, even for officers, and a focus on appearance, grooming standards, and no more beards, removing the notion of toxic leadership, a, quote, no more walking on eggshells policy. Secretary Hegseth said he is returning fitness standards to male fitness standards, but he is not opposed to women serving.
I'm also directing that warfighters in combat jobs execute their service fitness test at a gender-neutral, age-normed male standard scored above 70%. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world.
He said he was overhauling the Inspector General process, which he said rewarded complainers returning basic training standards to allow what in the past was defined as hazing, and defended renaming the Defense Department the War Department.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that.
Secretary Hegseth also called for ending military rules of engagement, which were put in place to avoid civilian casualties. Harris?
Jennifer, thank you.
So a big part of those changes will be Secretary Hegseth's 10-point plan to refocus the military and elevate what he calls a warrior ethos and prepare for war, with the goal of getting rid of, quote, wokeness.
A few pieces of that plan. Hegseth is calling to end political correctness in leadership, impose new physical guidelines, which are really old guidelines, and shift focus toward military strength.
All right, so Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich will join us on all of that in just a moment. But first, let's get to our senior White House correspondent, Peter Doocy. What a day, Peter.
And Sandra, it all boils down to the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, wanting more accountability. He wants higher standards for the men and women serving our country in uniform, and he wants greater consequences for America's adversaries.
Should our enemies choose foolishly to challenge us, they will be crushed by the violence, precision, and ferocity of the War Department. In other words, to our enemies, F-A-F-O. If necessary, our troops can translate that for you.
As President Trump walked out to Marine One for the chopper ride down the Potomac to Quantico, he announced that Hamas negotiators will have just 3 or 4 days from now to agree to the 20-point peace plan he and Benjamin Netanyahu have laid out. Then he told this rare gathering of top military brass the goal is going to be to keep them out of the Middle East during his time in office.
Everybody wants to be on the board of peace, and we're going to watch over that very volatile part of the world and keep it non-volatile so you don't have to get involved. We want to save you for other things or save you for nothing from that standpoint. We don't want you fighting wars, but if you have to, you're the most lethal fighting force in the world. And I would say that even 2-3 years ago, but now I say it with great enthusiasm.
The commander-in-chief also spoke a little bit to this gathering of top military brass about the war in Ukraine. He said that he is so disappointed in Vladimir Putin, and he again suggested that the Russians may be a paper tiger. Sandra.
All right, Peter Doocy live at the White House for us. Thank you, John.
All right, Sandra, let's bring in Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich. So this 10-point plan to renew the military, which in many ways takes it back to what it was doing 30 years ago. Strict physical requirements, tightening standards for warfighting eligibility and capability. Here's, in part, what the secretary said earlier today.
From this moment forward, the only mission of the newly restored Department of War is this: warfighting, preparing for war and preparing to win. Unrelenting and uncompromising in that pursuit. Not because we want war, no one here wants war, but it's because we love peace.
So you watched the whole thing. What did you think?
Well, there are a couple main themes. The first is that this is simply carrying out President Trump's promise on the campaign trail to rebuild the military and to get rid of distractions. When you listen to the Secretary of War, they're talking about getting rid of distractions that make it less likely that the Department of War can carry out its mission. And he was saying basically they need to be preventing wars by establishing themselves as the most lethal war-fighting military on the face of the planet. And they're doing that through the series of things that you had up on the screen, the 10-point plan. But it comes down to, reestablishing the same standards for everybody, whether you're an officer, a general in the military, or you're enlisted. For far too long, there's been a huge discrepancy between the consequences for failures. A good friend who was a Navy SEAL who always talks about, if you're enlisted and you lose a rifle, you lose your career and you're dishonorably discharged. If you're a general who loses a war, you oftentimes get promoted. So all of that went away today. And the bottom line is that the military is a life or death institution. Yep. It is not a social experiment. And this is something that the president made clear when he ran for office the third time and won, and something that he particularly has tasked the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, with carrying out. All
right. Hey, we should point out to our viewers at home that we're not seeing as much of Katie as we normally do because of some technical glitch. Your lips and your voice aren't matching up. We're working on getting that fixed. Here's Hegseth on service members, male or female, not making the cut. This is what he said.
If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. It will also mean that weak men won't qualify.
So, you've got the chance here that because they have to be held to a male standard, that a lot of women won't make the cut. But then at the same time, men who are not capable of carrying out a combat role, like me, wouldn't make the cut either. I'm not shy to say I never passed the physical requirements.
I think John could pass PT, but the point is that, and he talked about this, Hegseth, throughout the course of his speech, is that when we're dealing with a position in the military, you are dependent on your teammate to save your life. It's a life or death situation, and it is inappropriate and dangerous to put someone next to you who has not met the same standards of excellence, regardless of whether they're the first for some kind of diversity reason or for a gender reason. And the thing that Hegseth also talked about was recruiting, and how his 15-year-old son, when he looks at him and says, are we willing to send him into this institution, a life or death scenario? And if the answer is yes, but the leadership has failed to do their job. And he went on to say that my son is no more important than all the sons of America and daughters of America are making this tough decision about whether they're going to go into the military and serve their country. And it's inappropriate for leadership, for social justice or experimental reasons, to be putting unqualified people next to their sons and daughters in the field when these are life or death situations. They're really trying to protect people's integrity and make sure that the mission is free of distraction.
Hegseth did say, he said, the enemy doesn't care whether you're a man or a woman. They're trying to kill you.
They do not indeed.
Neither does the backpack or the rucksack that you have to carry or the artillery shell that you have to lift. You are either capable or you're not capable.
Exactly. And if you have one standard for everybody, then there's no discrimination at all.
Yep. Got it. Katie, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tom.
This is a moment of urgency, mounting urgency. Enemies gather, threats grow. There is no time for games. We must be prepared. If we're going to prevent and avoid war, we must prepare now.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth calling for an immediate review of physical standards and also a broad understanding of the threats that we face and what the Pentagon needs to do to be ready for it, as he spoke to a gathering of hundreds of generals and admirals that were going to, quote, back to the original standards with equal requirements for men and women. Here's more.
War does not care if you're a man or a woman. Neither does the enemy. Nor does the weight of your rucksack, the size of an artillery round, or the body weight of a casualty on the battlefield who must be carried. This, and I want to be very clear about this is not about preventing women from serving. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is.
With that, we bring in General Jack Keane, retired four-star general, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and Fox News senior strategic analyst. General Keane, very good to have you here. Obviously, there were a lot of generals, admirals gathered there today. What did you think of the speech from the Secretary of War?
Well, I thought it was quite exceptional and, delivered with passion. It had moral clarity to it. It had a focused sense of purpose on its 10 directives. I think he was kind of trying to do two things there: make certain that we are establishing very high standards that we demand of ourselves and demand of our troops so we can meet the challenges in war that are so needed. Mm-hmm. And he's also trying to get some of the impediments and burdens and bureaucracy and nonsense off the backs of our leaders so they can focus on what is important. I'll tell you for a fact that audience there took that speech, internalized it, and felt good about it. Many of them could have given the speech, and do give speeches like that when they're talking to their subordinate leaders, because I know that for a fact because I've seen it. And I polled a couple of them there, and they are in complete agreement with what took place there. I would find it stunning if somebody disagreed with that. If they did, they shouldn't be there.
Yeah, in fact, I thought it was interesting. At one point, he said, these are the things that we talk about amongst ourselves, but it's really time to say them out loud. And I thought that was very interesting. And then, you look at the country and, certain elements and who listens to different people on TV and all that. And I know you're not a big viewer of the show The View. So forgive me for playing this little clip from here, because this is, what some other people will be talking about. And I want to get your response to it. Let's play it.
I'm actually really befuddled by why he did that. The optics were terrible, meaning all of our top military brass are all in one place, and we spent $6 million to get them there. He was going to return to the highest male standard for combat positions because the troops were fat.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that was supposed to be an uplifting message for our military.
Just your gut reaction to that, General. And she talks about something others have talked about, which is the money that was spent to gather everyone together. Is that a problem in your mind?
No, not at all. Look at many of the service chiefs, when they take over, they bring their generals in. Not all of them, but the ones that are in command positions, and that's what happened here. A lot of the staff officers aren't here, and he wanted to bring them all together. He's been on the job 8 months. He's trying to make a cultural shift that he believes is necessary. We won't get into the reasons why with the previous administration, but he believes that's essential. He wrote all of his guidance out, promulgated it to the force, reinforced it as he traveled around the world seeing the commanders. And then after 8 months, he said, look, okay, let's bring them together and let's talk about this a little bit. I want to give him some sense of what I've seen, and that's manifested in his 10 directives. And what he's trying to do is help them. I mean, when you look at the directives, that's what it's all about. It's taking the burden off their backs and he's helping them enforce the standards that they want to achieve as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's nonsense that we shouldn't bring the generals together to talk about something important. The fact that our Army happens to be the fact that our military happens to be a little bit bigger than others' military doesn't mean we shouldn't get together. And face-to-face sometimes is really important as opposed to just doing it by video. And I think he wanted them he wanted them to feel his passion. And that was on display, and his commitment to them. And you got to see it and feel it. And I think he accomplished that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. A Zoom call does not cut it. You need to be in the same room. He has been there, as you say, for 8 months. I got lots of feedback from this speech this morning. It was all very positive. Recruitment is up. And we can just pop that full screen up. Clearly, this is a message that is resonating. And just one last thing, General, is that I thought it was very touching when he said, I want to feel that I would want to send my son or daughter into this military, feeling that it has the foundations and the structure and the standards that are necessary to make me feel good about that choice. Just a quick thought on that, if you can, General.
Well, certainly. He personalized it in terms, he's made the commitment himself, and he personalized it in terms of his family. And he may have run into some feedback because the truth is there's a lot of military sons and daughters in the military. And there were some challenges there with whether the fathers and the mothers wanted their kids to join the military because some of the things that were happening to it. So he may have been reacting a little bit to that. But the message is powerful. It's going to be very well received. And obviously, I think it was wonderful that they televised it because then all the troops out there have heard the same message. And that's important for them to know that the commitment is being made to them, to help them. And that's significant.
Well, we hope they all get that message, that we are 100% behind them. We understand their sacrifices, and we hope they have the strongest, best leadership possible. General Keane, thank you. As always, great to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
About our next guest. She is a former Army helicopter pilot who agrees with the Secretary's vision and the return of the warrior ethos. Joining us now is Amber Smith. Amber, thanks for being with us here today. You heard the President and the Secretary of War's speech. You heard about the call for higher standards, higher physical standards for brass, for generals, for leadership, but also not dependent upon one's gender. Men and women held to the same physical standards. Your thoughts?
Well, this was like breathing life back into the military that had been absolutely gutted for decades under the Obama administration, under the Biden administration, with this woke ideology, DEI policies, gender ideology that has absolutely infected the military. And we've seen it play out. We've seen the problems that it's caused. And so this has absolutely given very clear and concise directives to the very top of the military, is saying no more double standards. They are going to be the highest they can be to ensure that we have the most elite fighting force in the world. And bottom line, when you have those very restrictive and high standards, it means that more people will be coming home from the battlefield.
Amber, the Secretary said this may result in fewer women in combat roles. But that's not the point of the directive. The directive is combat readiness for a lethal fighting force based upon merit. To that, and it's tempting not to even give voice to the critics, but the critics have suggested this is a way of pushing women out of the military. We even have comments that suggested he was there to fat shame leadership. What would you say in response to those critics?
I would say that we need a military that is based 100% on merit. It should not matter if you're a woman. It should not matter your color. It should not matter if you're a man. He even said this will weed out weak men as well. And so nobody is going to care if there's a certain number of women fighting. And I will tell you, as a female former soldier myself, as a helicopter pilot that fought in both Iraq and Afghanistan, women want to be there because of merit, because they deserve it, because they pass the test and the standard the same as everybody else. If they start like we've seen in the recent military, where maybe women are being pushed in because they need a battle buddy or because they want to meet those quotas that some women in Congress want to say that the military needs to meet, that is creating a weaker military, and it is also hurting women in the military. Women need to have the people that they are serving with know that they are there and can do the exact same job that the men there can do. Otherwise, their lives is much harder. The way forward, meritocracy, accountability, the Secretary of War laid that out today. That is how we win wars and have the most elite fighting force in the world, which is the best deterrent prior to war.
All right, Amber Smith, thank you for your service, and thank you for being with us here today.
Thanks, Will.
President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth addressing the top military brass gathered in Quantico, Virginia. Hegseth dropping a nuke on woke standards and telling troops to drop down and give them 20.
Should our enemies choose foolishly to challenge us, they will be crushed by the violence, precision, and ferocity of the War Department. In other words, to our enemies, F-A-F-O. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. We are done with that. The era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look.
President Trump following Secretary Pete's speech with an hour-long speech, letting the brass know that he has their backs.
Together, we're reawakening the warrior spirit, and this is a spirit that won and built this nation. And we're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even waver a little bit. Over the next few years, we're going to make our military stronger, tougher, faster, fiercer, and more powerful than it has ever been before. We have beautiful paper, the gorgeous paper. I said throw a little more gold on it, they deserve it. I want the A paper, not the D paper. We used to sign a piece of garbage. I said, this man's going to be a general, right? Yeah. I don't want to use this. I want to use the big, beautiful, firm paper. America is respected again as a country. We were not respected with Biden. They looked at him falling downstairs every day. Every day the guy's falling downstairs. One thing with Obama, I had zero respect for him as a president, but he would bop down those stairs. I've never said, da-da, 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 pop, pop, pop. He'd go down the stairs, wouldn't hold on. I said, it's great. I don't want to do it. I guess I could do it, but eventually bad things are going to happen.
And the reviews are in from the ladies of The View. And Joy Behar wasn't a fan of Pete's war on fat generals.
Why is he obsessed with fat?
I don't understand how that was supposed to be an uplifting message for our military.
Maybe he's referring to Colonel Sanders.
It was really a bizarre thing. I don't understand the sort of hypocrisy of firing these people, having all these people meet together, and then denigrating them.
All right, so going into this, Dana, the mainstream media was freaking out. Why is he doing this? What's going on? And now you see what happened today. What happened?
Well, even this morning, there was an NPR report that said, well, this is reminiscent of 1935, I think, when Hitler brought all the generals together, and they just basically the cat ran away with the spoon, and they a little bit lost their minds. So when it comes to The View, frankly, this speech, she wasn't a targeted audience. The target audience was the people in the room. Now, they open it up to the media so that everybody could see it. We live in a television world. That makes sense to me. But even I wasn't the audience. The audience were the people that they brought in. And I, for one, am all for a more aggressive posture for Department of War. I'm actually okay calling it the Department of War. I like being on a more aggressive standing. I think that what the president said about "I have your backs" was the basic military principle that maybe they didn't feel like they needed to hear it, but everybody was in the room. Everybody heard the same thing. So nobody can go away and say, I think we're supposed to do climate change stuff now. No, everybody got the same message all at the same time. I did think that one of the things that might have been great for the president and for the generals and the secretary would have been for there to be maybe a shorter speech on the president's side, but a longer photo line where he could shake everybody's hand, get a picture, and have that personal touch.
Did he do the
That's
photo
very
line?
good. I don't think so. I think he left right after that.
Okay. Greg Gutfeld.
Yes.
Were you inspired by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth?
Very confused. Dana, what does FAFO stand for?
I have to direct message.
Just the first part.
Just to ask.
Okay, all right. I was just quite. The attack on beards was just a mean slight on Cory Booker. I don't understand. It's not surprising that The View does not understand how important fitness is, especially to self-defense. You know, their only threats are flatulence and heartburn. Their only enemy is carbs, and they're getting their butts kicked. I was sitting, listening to this, and I kept thinking about how I used to see our nation's enemies when I grew up. I grew up during the Cold War, so it was Russia. I was here at 9/11, so it was Islamism. Those were the two. But today, I don't feel like there's an evil axis. I get that we can't trust Russia, we can't trust China, we can't trust Iran, but they don't fill me with apocalyptic fear. And I think it's because I feel like it's from within. And I think they understood that there was a pernicious, determined ideology that saw virtue in our weakness and viewed strength as oppressive. That was the wokeism. And people think that being against woke is just minor. No, it was a big deal. I always felt that what was destroying our country was within. They understand that. If you look at the last, 5 years or whatever, appointing a cross-dressing luggage thief to oversee nuclear waste and a delusional Admiral Mann as Assistant Secretary of Human Health and Services, is that right? Who fashions himself a female. These revealed priorities that were beneficial to our enemies. They love seeing that stuff. When we opened investigation into the politics of our troops to weed out perceived white supremacy, our enemies must have liked that too, because we're taking our eye off the ball. When we mandated curriculum that dictated that our country's values are indefensible, that they might be racist or oppressive, I mean, that is amazing for people who hate us. Our enemies must have loved that. So I guess when I see this, is you're seeing solid leadership standing up to this suicidal snowball that's coming down, that was to an impending implosive defeat. And our global competitors who do not have this suicidal empathy, they don't even have to lift a weapon. We destroy ourselves. I mean, identity politics is the key and was the key to our own destruction. So I feel like this is progress in a big way. It's not about China or Russia or Iran, it's about us.
Harold Ford, do you take issue with anything your colleague Greg has said?
I just have a slightly different opinion. First of all, I feel like I've been gone for a month. It's good to see everybody. It's good to be back. Couple things. And I don't like differing with my pal DP either. But a couple things I go. First off,
brace yourself, America.
I tread carefully. I didn't like the televised part of this because it reminded me of something that might happen in China or North Korea. I didn't mind Secretary Hegseth, whom I know and consider a friend, doing what he did. But I have to say, if I were an adversary of the United States, and obviously I'm not, but if I was watching this, I'm not convinced that I would be more fearful of the United States, or for that matter, wanting to be more like them. Number two, I don't like the Department of War moniker now. I think it should be called the Department of Deterrence. President Trump is the first president in my lifetime, I'm 55, who openly talks about not wanting war, wanting to end wars, wanting to get people out of war. Even when they're not Americans shedding blood, he has shown a compassion verbally for, and I think sincerely, on behalf of the Ukrainians and the Russians. Greg, you're right. In a lot of ways, I grew up, you're just a few years older than me, but I grew up the same way, where Russia and then the axis of evil that President, your boss, talked about so eloquently, Dana. I think the challenge we face now is one that has evolved. We still face a military threat from China, and I think we face an economic threat from China. And I think technology, to me, is the great kind of equalizer in some ways. As we watch the threat we face from radical Islam in the 2000s, we saw the rise of non-nation state actors. And the non-nation state actors today are ones that have great engineers and people who can hack into systems and can undermine and upend the way lives are lived, and for that matter, anywhere in the world.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
How do you fight those threats when you're fighting yourself?
So I think every generation has had an opportunity or has had that threat where they've had to fight from within. You can look back in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. From the 20s, when you had basically inside America, it was very, very rich people who, frankly, that's how unions got started. And frankly, where I'm from in the South, we didn't have electricity. So we had to have a president create the TVA and do all these things. So we've always had these things, and it may be more prominent today. I don't disagree with your things about DI and some of the challenges, but I look at it differently. And I just wish and hope that both the president and Secretary Hegseth, I'm sure they understand, the men and women in that room today, they're the most important, the most experienced commanders in all of the world. They have seen more combat managed and successfully managed through more crises than anybody, I would argue, in American business, education, media, and certainly the military. I hope at some point we're able to give those men and women in that room our plans to win in Ukraine, our plans to resolve the matters in the Middle East, and for that matter, what we're going to do going forward to ensure that, Greg, that what you said turns out to be right, that my kids and your kids and all of our kids don't have to think about the kind of axis of evil and challenges that we face. They probably will. It will be different. But I think the moment we face today, China is the thing that concerns me.
I'm more scared of what I see in our cities, radicals, the revolutionaries on campuses, the people who call us fascists and Hitler, who kill our leaders here. North Korea didn't kill Charlie Kirk.
Yeah,
Well,
and I would say,
I
look,
think the technology and all that
the
stuff is
generals in that room, the military personnel in that room saw the weakness and fecklessness of President Joe Biden. They saw someone who let Afghanistan fall. I still have questions as to what happened in the Situation Room. Was he fully there? Was he fully with it as he was making these grievous national security decisions? They saw a commander-in-chief that said don't, and then they saw a Russian adversary that did in Ukraine. They saw someone who said don't, and then they saw that Hamas did in Israel. They saw weakness. And then they see President Trump, and they saw a guy who took out Fordo. They saw a guy who acted, who's made peace in 7 conflicts, who's on the verge of a Gaza peace deal. And I think they're relieved to have this guy back as a true commander-in-chief. Look, I remember in 2021, the Russians put out their military ad. To hell with limits, they said. There's no victory without battles. We put out our ad for the military recruitment video. I was raised by 2 moms. I marched for equality. I'm sorry. What do you respect? What does the adversary respect? They respect the strength of President Trump. And the message he sent, I agree with you, Dana, is so important when he said, I am with you, I support you, I have your backs 110%. I remember going to Fort Bragg with President Trump when I was press secretary. And the guys there were like, you have such a tough job as press secretary. I'm like, no, you have the toughest job. Exactly. And I said, and I think of you guys when I land in the Osprey and the things that you have gone into. And I said, you've got to be nervous. And they said, no, we are ready for it. We want the green light from President Trump. They want the green light because they have a commander-in-chief. I don't think they want the green light under President Biden after seeing the perilous fall in Afghanistan.
Biden is no longer the president, everybody.
Thank
and
goodness.
The same military that worked under Biden is the same military that executed that flawless execution of the nuclear. That President Trump then all of a sudden build this military. This is a continuation from President Obama, from President Bush, from H.W. Bush, from Reagan. We are the greatest in the world. And I just don't think that, I don't disagree with a lot of things you said.
2 wars started on Biden's
all I said, everybody around the table, stop looking back. Go forward. President Trump, you deserve a lot of the credit, but don't trash everybody that came before you.
I would not want to look backward if I realized that Biden was never president.
What?
You got to show his face when it's...
But first, breaking tonight, a new deadline for Hamas, new rules for the U.S. military, and new discounts for Americans buying prescription drugs. President Trump had a pretty busy day, touting a big deal with a major pharmaceutical firm and declaring America is reawakening the warrior spirit that built the nation. He's also giving the Hamas terrorist group just a handful of days now to agree to a landmark Middle East peace proposal. Senior White House correspondent Peter Ducey starts us off tonight live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Brett. The 2-year anniversary of the October 7th Hamas terror attack that started this war is a week from today. Hamas has less time than that to review the 20-point peace plan and get back to the White House with a yes or a no.
We're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is.
That means Hamas has till this weekend to accept President Trump's 20 principles of peace or prepare for an Israeli military onslaught backed by the United States.
Hamas has to agree. And if they don't, it's going to be very tough on them, but it is what it is.
As commander-in-chief, President Trump wants a major U.S. military makeover and addressed a rare gathering of top brass in Quantico, Virginia.
If I don't like somebody, I'm going to fire him right on the spot.
But on stage, his message was more encouraging.
I am with you. I support you. And as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even waver a little bit. It's the way it is.
And he pledged an expensive expansion.
Under my budget, we will be expanding the U.S. Navy by at least 19 ships next year, including submarines, destroyers, assault ships, and more.
Back in the Oval Office, flanked by public health officials and the CEO of Pfizer, the president laid out his latest effort to lower drug prices.
Today, Pfizer is committing to offer all of their prescription medications to Medicaid.
All consumers, even those not on Medicaid, will also have access to discount drugs on a platform called Trump RX.
These drugs will be available for direct purchase online at a website operated by the federal government.
And the president's new partnership with Pfizer paid off for him instantly.
The people weren't taking it, I would imagine. They couldn't test it. God bless you, Bobby. I hope I didn't catch COVID just there. Don't you have Paxlovid? What is it? He's got Paxlovid. Give me a Paxlovid immediately.
And any minute now, we are expecting new details about a new $500 million settlement with Harvard. Officials here have been trying to freeze Harvard's federal funding and stop Harvard from getting federal contracts over anti-Semitism on campus. President Trump is saying that part of this settlement is going to require Harvard to start a network of trade schools. Brett.
Secretary Kennedy did cover his mouth. Peter Ducey live on the North Lawn. Peter, thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.